Hello everyone and welcome to our Tech Tuesday tutorials number 102. Today we do a quick COVID-19 follow-up and then we dive into Google Meet tips and tricks. Well, I'm glad to say that my predictions were wrong, but they were made on a supposition of what we would be at if we didn't start flattening the curve. So with a 35% infection rate with no slowing down, then in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, I hope and pray that next Tuesday we are not at 263,000. Well, I'm happy to say that we did do something, and our numbers are actually much less. You can see that we started flattening the curve with a slight little spike today, and we reduced our actual growth rate numbers by a decent amount. 21% from 30% down to 25, down to 21, down to 13, and then a little bit back up today. But one thing you have to keep in mind is that this flattening is due to the actions of the past 2 weeks or so. Really, this decline is due to the actions of about the past week or maybe week and a half. So when we started actually closing schools, closing businesses, and starting to do social distancing programs, you're not going to see a drop in cases immediately because of the incubation period. And the incubation period varies wildly, but the short of it is that it is anywhere from 2 to 14 days, with an average somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5.2 in some cases, 6.4 in other cases. We could just take an average of this and guesstimate around 5 to 8 days or so that it'll take for you to get exposed and then show symptoms. And it could be possibly another couple of days before the symptoms are bad enough for you to go get checked and thus show up as a new infection. So a week isn't a bad ballpark figure to kind of guesstimate as to if your actions will take effect and have some flattening capability. Well, a week ago, we had a pretty rough little time that last week. I mean, that's why I was starting to get a little worried. Well, that might have been due to St. Patty's Day. Our actions there were pretty irresponsible as a country, and a lot of folks still had their own little parties and went spring break and did things like that. I did part of my Tech Tuesday on some actions we were taking. In fact, we may get a spring break bump in the next couple days, and this might be the start of that, because again, there's about a week period in between. Well, I started thinking about the models here and realizing that when you're calculating death rate, because now we have to start thinking about our death rate. Our death rate has gone up a lot in the last week. Why is that? It's based on the death rate and the time for it to kill you. So it takes about 7 days before you start really seeing any kind of symptoms for incubation. But then once you start having the first symptom to death, the average time here from first symptom to death were about 14 days. So that is something to kind of think about. The people who are getting infected and thus showing up here, the deaths you're seeing here came from, on average, infections from 2 weeks prior. So 2,995 deaths came from possibly a population of 6,400. That's a ridiculously high mortality rate if you believe these numbers. And that's the thing. We really don't. And they've been saying that these numbers could be 20 or 40 times higher, which would make a lot more sense. So how are you calculating this death rate? The current numbers of today are not producing the deaths of today. As we were just saying, it's numbers of the past that produce the deaths of today. But we don't know what these numbers were because we haven't been testing appropriately. We haven't been testing people who are asymptomatic. There's no way we can really get that number, the true number of when we had it. But we can do some estimates. And so one of the things I did was I took the basic death rate of 3.4% that has been provided by the World Health Organization. And let's just say you believe that's true. So what I did is I said, what about this number? What gets us the closest to this if we take one of these days and multiply it by 3.4%, which comes closest? I found that if I went back 3 days, 104,000, I got closest to 2995, which is almost 3,000. The closest one was that, roughly. And there may be this one, but as I looked at a pattern, I said this. So if this is 3 days prior using this to calculate, we could see 110, 98, 150, 123, and we can see an actual kind of close correlation here between these numbers. This hits 1,000 when this hits 1,000. That's 780, that's 806. These are fairly close. So we can use this with some predictive confidence to look at this and say, these are our rough ballpark projected deaths. If our growth rate continues to drop by about 0.3% every day, it looks like it's been dropping a decent amount and we can keep dropping it, then these are our projected deaths total. We're not out of the woods yet, but it's positive because we are making some serious progress on this. And that's actually really cool. So I looked at this and said, okay, let's project this out. If we were doing this based on today, and this is where we would be going by the end of April. We would be looking at somewhere about 1.2 million active cases. And active cases are the total cases minus the actual deaths and the people that have recovered. So we're now starting to see a lot of recovery because it takes a while to recover, right? It takes about 2 to 3 weeks. So 1, 2, 3, we're starting to see all these people that got infected before get recovered. Fascinating stuff for me. I just love looking at numbers. But if I took this and said, let's just keep going, this is my projections now based on our actions that we've taken in the last couple of weeks. The big thing to note here is that, and this is a better look at it, up until April here, if we keep dropping our percentages by about 0.3% every day, because let's say we start tapering off and we don't do quite as aggressive gains anymore, well, by the end of May, we might actually look at coming back down, and we might hit our peak of about 1.5 million, and 3% of that would be deaths. And then we can start our way back down. But that means if we hit our peak right here in the middle of, let's say, May 11th, and it took us about a month to get here, then we are looking at least another month coming down. So in the middle of June or July, if we are doing everything like we should, which kind of goes back to that whole point I was saying that we are not coming back to school. I don't see it. But we might be able to come back to school in the fall. The real danger here is if we say, oh, we're starting to do better, let's go ahead and open up the schools. Let's go ahead and open up the businesses as we start our decline. You know what's going to happen, right? We're going to shoot back up because we're going to get more people infected. Because at this point, enough people are dying or recovering to outnumber the number of new infections. But this only keeps happening if you continue to socially isolate. Someone said, if you do what you're supposed to do in a pandemic, it's going to look like you overreacted. But that's only because you prevented so much. In this case, you get ready. The pundits are going to come back and be like, oh, well, we need to get on back. We need to get the economy roaring again. Let's stop doing all this stuff where the numbers are on the decline. Careful with that. Ride it out. Get to where we get to the bottom of the bell curve, and then we can start celebrating. Great update. This is a nice positive update, even though this is tragic, right? But brace yourselves, we're going to have a lot more. But we are flattening the curve. We are flattening from what we were thinking we were going to do, and that's an awesome feat. So stay home, continue to stay home, continue to do what you're supposed to do. All right, so for the tech bit of this week's Tech Tuesday, I did want to mention that you have a few little tips and tricks within Hangouts that we did not cover last week. The first thing I want to mention was keyboard shortcuts. If you use Control ? While you're in a Hangout, you can see keyboard shortcuts here. And some of the more useful ones here is to enable or disable your camera, use Control E. To mute or unmute your microphone, use Control D. To hide the people panel, or show the people panel, use Alt-Control-P and Alt-Control-C to do the chat. So Alt-Control-P will reveal the people panel, and Alt-Control-P will close it. Alt-Control-C will open it, and then again we'll close it. The other thing I wanted to mention was how to set up a live stream. Now the live stream, you might think you could do it right here, but you don't see it anywhere on here. So to do a live stream, you actually have to do it through Calendar. You go in here to Calendar and select something you would like to do. Let's say tomorrow at 9 p.m. I'm working on this video late. And you go up here and you say we're going to have, a policy update. And I would like to have a few people involved in this meeting for a policy update. But I want this going out to everyone in our school, but I only want a few people to be able to participate. So I would add guests in here to participate and then go in and add conferencing. Then I would go to more options, and again I could add a few guests here. Let's say I'll add Dustin and Dave. These are going to be people who are participating in the policy update, and I can then expand this and choose add a live stream. So because I'm doing it in Calendar, I can add a live stream right here under the Hangouts information. It generates the live stream link. I can copy that, and then I can email this out to people, and people within my organization, within my school, could click and join this stream. When they join the stream, they can only view it. They cannot participate in any other way. They just have to be able to view it. They can't communicate, they can't chat, they can't do whatever. Whereas Dustin and Dave could actually go in there and chat and join me and be part of a 3-panel thing. They may have updates based on certain things they're doing, and then the rest of the people are watching this. The important thing you need to know about this is that mom and dad and the public cannot see this. These live streams are only for people in your organization. If you would like to distribute that out to mom and dad and so on, when you're in the actual Hangout, you can go and record it. And then, as we discussed in Tech Tuesday last week, it'll save it to your drive. You can then put it up on YouTube, or you can share it out via private link and send that out to mom and dad, post it on your website, do whatever you want to do. The other thing I wanted to show you was an extension called Google Meet Grid View, and I'll provide the link to it in the description. I did a webinar for this earlier today, and I'm actually going to use footage from that because we had a lot more people in the call and I could demonstrate it a lot better. So that's going to come in right about now. There is an extension that I've tested out that's pretty good. It's Enable Grid for a Google Meet. In fact, I may even create a section here called Extensions. And this one enables a grid. And once you install it and you join a meet, you'll get this little icon here. And you could say highlight speakers, or include myself in the grid, or only show participants. But what happens if I just hit this in general? Then boom, it grids out everyone in the call, and that's my display. And the only thing is, you know, I could go here and pin this, but it doesn't work. None of the full screen stuff works while this is happening until I turn this off. And I can toggle it off in no time, just one click, but I can either see all the grid or not. But within that, if I hover, I can say only show participants with the video, and then it's only going to show Mallory because she's the only one with the video. If someone else could turn their video back on, that would be good. There we go. Now, and if we get a couple more to turn the video on, then we'll see that those grid out automatically. That's awesome, right? I can even have it highlight the speakers, but this is an add-on for this. This is an add-on for, and you guys can mute your mic or your cameras now. That's that little add-on. It's right here. It's for Google Chrome. It's called Enable a Grid for Google Meet. And it's really great if you're meeting with your students and you want that face-to-face contact. Okay, so I hope that kind of explained it a little bit for you. The final thing I wanted to mention were admin settings for Hangouts Meet and Google Hangouts. If you're using the old Hangouts chat, you may find that you cannot chat with people outside your organization. You can't have instant messaging talks with them. So if you're trying to talk to one of us through Google Hangout chat, you can't. Or if you're trying to talk to mom and dad on their own personal Gmail, you can't. It is something that can be changed by your admins, and it's under external chat settings and whether or not people can chat externally. It may be something that your IT folks want to consider turning on, at least for the next few months while we're doing a lot more remote learning. And do understand that you can have a different setting, let's say for staff, where this is actually allowed to be on, than students, where this setting can be turned off. So you can put people into different groups and turn on or off these various settings based on the population. So just because we allow that for teachers doesn't mean we have to allow it for students. In fact, one of the settings here is whether or not you allow recording and whether or not you allow streaming. It's highly suggested that you allow recording for staff and streaming for staff, but do not allow it for students. But these options do have to be turned on. I think they're turned off by default, and you have to go in there and actually turn them on. And so talk to your IT folks, because right now is a really good time, especially recording, for teachers to be able to record those Hangouts that they're doing, those meets, even if they're doing it by themselves and using it to just record their screen and record a lesson that they share their screen on. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it useful. One thing I would mention is if you get this video in an email and it plays back just right there in your Gmail, you can actually go to the title up here and just click on this title, or click down here where it says YouTube, and you can actually go to the YouTube channel, and then when you're there, you can scroll down and like that video. It really helps if you like that video, and it really helps if you subscribe. So go down here and hit like and then subscribe. And if you want to get email notifications on these in the future, just hit that bell icon, and that'll make sure that you get notified and whenever I upload anything new. Very much appreciate it, guys. We'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.